You know, for years, one argument I would always have people throw at me was, man, when you get older, you'll get more conservative. As you get older, you'll get more conservative. If you ever have any success at all, make any money, buddy, you'll definitely vote Republican then. I heard that all the time. And I used to say to myself, damn, I sure hope that don't happen. And I would look over to a friend of mine who was in his 90s. He passed away last year, but he was in his 90s and he was still very progressive, very open-minded. And I would say to myself, well, there's one guy I can point to and say the older he got, he didn't turn into an asshole. But I would look over at people that I knew that were hippies back in the day, and they supported the likes of Bobby Kennedy, and then I watched them just evolve right into, Trump-supporting assholes. And I would say to myself, man, I sure hope that never happens to me. I sure hope I never evolve into that. But what I've learned is that the older I get, the farther to the left I go. And I don't struggle as hard as I used to struggle, and I catch myself going even further to the left. And the reason I say that is because I truly don't see an alternative. I don't see another route to go. I don't see another road to go down. Because on one side, yes, you have a party, the Democratic Party, who's not perfect, who I don't always agree with. But I feel like that if I align myself with that party, that I will live to vote another day. And I feel like that they have the best interest of the majority of Americans at heart. And meanwhile, I look over at a party who has just completely lost its way. I started to say it's not the Republican Party of my grandfathers, but that ain't even true. It's not even the Republican Party of George W. Bush anymore. It's something completely different. So when I catch myself debating with people on the other side of the aisle now, it's not the same as when we were debating 15 or 20 years ago. We're not sitting here debating about who's going to pay for the health care anymore. We're not sitting here debating on, should we be in a certain war or not. We're in a completely different argument now. Now we're sitting here debating on whether democracy should stay in place. And I never thought that when I went to the polls, democracy would be my main issue that I would really be worried the most about. I thought we would just be having political arguments like we always did, but we're in a different place. I remember back during the Bush years arguing with my friends about, hey, we shouldn't be in Iraq, and they would express to me why they thought we should be. But at no point was I over here supporting Saddam Hussein. At no point was we over here interviewing Saddam Hussein and walking through Iraqi grocery stores and pointing out how great Iraq was. But that's where we're at now. And that's why when people says, well, could you see yourself going more conservative as you get older? Hell no. Because the Republican Party of my grandfather, the Republican Party of George W. Bush is dead and gone, and they have been replaced by a group of people whose number one policy is cruelty. A party where racism and homophobia and hating on trans people and hating on anyone you disagree with is not a deal breaker for none of them. I could never align myself with anything like that. I would never want my name attached to anything like that. And it would be great to get back to those old political arguments we used to have where we were just disagreeing about who was going to pay for something, but we're not there anymore. And as I sit back and I watch what they call the Republican Party today, as I sit back and watch them just erode and crumble right in front of my face, the hardest part about it is watching people embrace it and not see it for what it is. I used to always hold out a little bit of hope that the people I was disagreeing with would have the common human decency to not be a racist or to not be a homophobe or to not just be a fucking asshole. I used to really hold out hope. But I watch them sit back and condone it, and I watch them make jokes about it, and I watch them laugh about it. And I say to myself, yeah, I'll be a 90-year-old man sitting here liberal and progressive as hell because I'm never going to be aligned with that. And what's going to end up happening is the party will eventually be destroyed from within because let's face it, they were always the party of no ideas. They have been for years. My entire life, the Republican Party never had a new idea. They never had a new solution. They never had something that we could all agree would be a good thing for the majority. All they ever had in mind was to tear down something a progressive put in place. All they ever had in mind was to vote against anything that a Democrat brought to the table. That's all they ever were. And that shtick eventually got old. People began to see through that shtick. So Donald Trump come along, and he didn't have no new ideas. He didn't have ways to help anybody. He just ripped the Band-Aid off the progress that was made, and he empowered everybody to be cruel, and he empowered everybody to be assholes. And he sits down and he has dinner with white supremacists and doesn't see anything wrong with it. And he lets them have the microphone, and he calls them very fine people. And if he does at all try to condemn anything they done, he always finds a way to blame it on us, that it was us that caused them to be that way. So I sit back and I look at the party that once belonged to my grandfather, once belonged to George W. Bush, and I say to myself, well, these people are just going to destroy it from within. They're going to completely destroy it because not only do they not have any ideas, but their number one policies is cruelty and racism. So once the majority of the people sees through that and realizes that they have nothing to do with your best interest and all they have is cruelty and hatred, eventually the good people's going to have to rise up and put an end to it and vote it out once and for all. And we're going to have to look back on this time in American history and learn how to learn from those mistakes as to how we let it happen to start with. We'll have to have the discussion as to, man, how is this even a possibility? I have my own theories as to why things got the way they were. I know I slam organized religion all the time, but at the end of the day, I really do believe that if you're raised up in an environment where you never question the status quo and where everything your leader says is right, and if you question that leader at all or step out of line, you're out. When you're duped into ignoring science and ignoring facts and ignoring evidence, when you're groomed as a child to believe that way, then yeah, I think a con man can come along and can capitalize on your darkest side and bring that out and amplify it. That's just one of the many reasons why I think we ended up in the boat we're in. But I think years from now, people are going to look back at this time and they're going to study how it all happened, how that this party just completely crumbled and eroded right before everybody's eyes. And the best part for me will be when it's all over and we all look back at it, there will be those of us who stood on the side of sanity. There will be those of us who stood on the side of goodness and for the truth and for democracy. There's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to always have pictures of them in those hats pulled back up, and they're going to say, hey, wasn't you one of them? And I'm glad to say that I've never been that guy. I'm not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes in my lifetime, but I've never been that son of a bitch for a minute.